called Towards Shared Understanding to Realize a Free and Secure Internet for All. I am Osama Manzar. I am a filler for this session, to be very frank. I have been asked to moderate because Shehzad Ahmed, who is the head of Bytes for All from Pakistan, couldn't get the visa to come. So they asked me if I could fill in. I also see it as an opportunity for learning here. We have very esteemed panel here. I would like not to go into the biodata of each one of them, but just take their name and then ask them to introduce themselves so that we know as a first round. And then we will get into the discussion. And to start with, can I ask Thomas, who is the ambassador to China, Mongolia, and Vietnam, stationed in China, to introduce himself, and then we'll go further.
So thank you, Osama. Thank you, everyone, for joining this panel this afternoon. I think all these days have been very interesting, and it's taking toll on people, but thank you once again for coming. So you see, at least you see in the program, Miss Piret Urb's name, but she's waiting at her plane to take off from Beijing. And every time I come to Mongolia, I find myself in the chair of a substitute person. Last time it happened during Community of Democracies. They're also plane delayed. So this time I feel the responsibility and fill the seat of Piret Urba. So I'm ambassador of Estonia to Mongolia, residing in Beijing, and it's every time coming back to Mongolia is refreshing. And I stop on that.
Thank you. Next to Thomas is Lisa Garcia. She's an old-time friend of ours from FMA, based in Philippines. Lisa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Garcia. I'm the Gender and ICT Coordinator of the Foundation for Media Alternatives. So for quite some time already, we've been dealing on the issue of internet, the appropriate and strategic use of individuals and groups. And we've been helping out in capacity building of different partners that we have. We also do research and networking.
Thank you, Lisa. Next to Lisa is Ritu, who is a colleague of mine at Digital Empowerment Foundation based in India. So Ritu, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ritu, and I'm working with Digital Empowerment Foundation. And I have been working as a program officer for the internet rights domain, and been trying to understand the access, internet governance issues, women and gender rights issues in India.
Thank you, Ritu. And Ben Blink from Google. I just met Ben for the first time, but very charming.
Oh, thank you. My name is Ben Blink. I'm on the international relations team at Google. I'm based out of Washington, D.C. permanently, doing a rotation in the region, spending time in Hong Kong and Singapore. I focus on issues of freedom of expression and all the great things that a free and open internet can do. I also look at the bad speech, the problems that governments and citizens face as a result of more unencumbered communications.
Thank you, Ben. So like all of you know, the topic is how to understand and realize a free and secure internet for all. But the focus of this session is more from the bottom-up perspective, from how we can think of also those who are not online, who have any access, think about their right, how do they get into. I am not expert on the internet right too much, but one thing that I can commonsensically understand is that while we keep talking about internet rights and secure access, there are more than 50% of the people who do not have access. Like I come from a country who contribute the second largest people on earth to get online, but 80% of our people are not online. You know, serious issue of how to get them. And while more and more content are coming online, people who are not getting online is getting even more and more deprived. And so while we talk about rights and issues of access and privacy and security, there is a whole lot of of audience which is just not online and what to do about them. So if some of those kind of things can also be highlighted from the perspective of the third world countries and the second world countries and the large countries where accessibility is a big issue, access is a big issue, that will be wonderful. With that note, I would like to invite Thomas Lok to start the panel as being the first speaker.
So once again, thank you very much. Let me just say 2 words also about Mongolia. Is that we try to cooperate with Mongolians on a government level as much as we can, and I think there are 2 main reasons. As President Elbert Dorch this morning said, that more important are people, not the governments. I think one of the reasons is I very much like Mongolian people. And second issue is that we started 25 years ago processes which we feel are being implemented here in Mongolia, and the implementation goes on. So I think we all understand where Mongolia wants to be one day, and what are the challenges and the problems Mongolia facing. So to my mind, Mongolia is inspiring country to be here and to work with Mongolians. I have to, so I try to be in 10 minutes time, and I think I'd like to structure my remarks in 4 categories. Leadership is one, second is benefits, coming to the internet issues, first very shortly risks, and 4 is future. So having said that, yesterday at one of the meetings, somebody said that democracy is difficult. I don't share this sentiment. I think democracy is easy, but the decisions to make which would lead to democracy are difficult sometimes to take. And that's why they need sometimes to take a bold decision. Who? Certainly, in our case, government. Why I'm saying so? Because I'm going probably turn the pivot. As Obama said, we should look at the bottom-up approach. But our experience, I think, is from top to bottom, and I try to explain why is it. It was 15 years ago then Estonian government took a leadership, in fact, and put a vision to a society how Estonia should look like after a certain time period. And taking the leadership was based on very simple recognition or understanding. And understanding was more or less following. Nations who have access to information having benefit or competitive edge as compared to those nations who do not have access. So first point is on internetization is competitiveness. When the simple idea started if I ask to put this difficult slide, last one, Nelly. So, simple idea of internalization of Estonia started with e-governance and paperless government. Today's Estonian internet structure, don't try to remember it, but believe me, it works, is I would say, this kind of tree or spider, if you even will, but it works. And I later on come back to that shortly, what it means. But another idea is also, I think it works in every society and with every government, and why it also perhaps needs to take a certain leadership for government, is that internet is not only communication, but it also providing better services. It creates jobs. And what is very important that they believe also is that it supports the development of civil society. And from governmental point of view, the fourth point is very important. It brings government closer to the society and creates between society and government healthy discussion. And as of today, the process which started with very simple recognition of competitiveness has become in Estonian society as a part of human rights. It's very integral sort of part of everyday life in Estonia. Now, the risks. Yes, there is certainly risk of defamation, there is risk of hate speech, but today, if you happen to hear, was a main panel in this big hall, and there was also a question asked, what is the best remedy for hate speech? What we believe is more speech, pluralistic view on things, and to really develop a discussion. On future. In this country like Mongolia, there are 3 million people and 5 million subscribers. Or in Estonia, there is 1 million people, and Estonians issue 40 million e-signatures a year, which is part of this Estonian e-governance system. One could see clearly the trend. Internet is going to be used more every day. It's going to be faster. It's going to be less wireless, and people are going to use these communication tools more and more. So I think the simple point of that is you better don't, I don't like say fight, but you better use the opportunities what provides today's communication systems for the benefit. There is a Chinese proverb that if wind blows, some people build walls, some people build windmills. I think this proverb gives you both options. You see risks and benefits, but at the end of the day, we believe it's benefits what our society has. I'm not going to talk into the numbers, more numbers. How much Estonians use the e-services, but I want to make a point that once again, I'll stress the point that we believe there is more useful sides and pros and cons to internet and free internet rather than negative sides, because we have seen in the development of our society, and given the fact that Estonia doesn't have any defamation law, we believe it's not a part of criminal system, but the civil sort of discourse or civil law, which are resolved in society. We haven't seen really in society any problematic or kind of problems raised from that. And maybe the last point is, what we see in internet is that if to try to encapsulate it in one word, with freedom online and media freedom, is empowerment. Empowerment of different social classes, empowerment of people. But at the end of the day, I think Estonia's experience is that it's worth to use. So with that, I would finish here. Thank you.
I remember one of the things that when I went to Estonia about a few years back and went to parliament, the whole parliament is online, there's no piece of paper and all that. And in our country, in India, you just can't imagine having a computer in the parliament except shouting voices and all that in the parliament. But at the same time, Estonia must be a smallest municipality of Delhi. Of 20 million population in Delhi, apart from 1.2 billion. So there are challenges of numbers and masses. Just before I request Lisa to come on board, one of the news that I want is that in India, 66A used to be an article which used to be a huge article in hand of the government to arrest anybody who is saying something that government doesn't like against anybody. And it was a serious issue on freedom of expression and association and so on and so forth. And the Supreme Court has just overruled that and said that this article has to be removed. So there is a huge boost in the country. But at the same time, there is always a challenge of security online, because imagine a person who is illiterate, uneducated, gets online and the first experience that the person gets is something like, either the account has been taken away or sees something that he or she didn't want to see, and so on and so forth. So it becomes quite intimidating when you get online and you are not secure enough. But whether security is a government responsibility or it's a societal responsibility that corrects itself is the question that Thomas also told, that there is more better positive on the internet than the negative. But with that note, let me request Lisa to share her notes.
Yes, Thomas mentioned about the pros and cons in passing on of the internet. And we know that for women, for instance, I will be talking about gender issues, about women and how the internet affects them. And for women, of course, being online is very important. It has allowed them space. It has given them the venue to communicate, to express themselves, to be more social, to interact with other people. We have a lot of overseas workers, and that is a means for them to interact with their family because they're very far from them. But then, at the same time, of course, we're talking about the cons. There are risks online, especially for women. There have been researches already. Pew Research, for instance, said that there's a lot of online harassment going on, and it's more on women rather than men. And this is something which APC, the Association for Progressive Communications, in partnership with several countries, there are 7 of us actually who partnered with them, and we did a research on online violence against women. So I will be sharing with you portions of that research, at least a summarized version of that research, which aims to document women's experiences in relation to technology-related violence against women in order to raise the visibility of the issues and, importantly, to advocate for the development of effective remedies, both legal remedies and corporate remedies as well. Well, we're glad, when we were starting this program, it was very difficult actually for us to make people interested in the issue of technology-based violence against women. When you talk about violence against women, it's women issues. They think that it's trivial, especially when since it's technology-based. But we are glad that more and more people are becoming aware of the issue. Like this morning, Maria mentioned about it. There are threats, online violence against women journalists that they're looking at. Because this is something that is very real, something that is happening to women who just want to express themselves online, who just want to belong in the online world. So what we did was to collect stories. We did case studies. So for the 7 countries are Bosnia and Herzegovina. There's Colombia, Congo, Kenya, Mexico, Pakistan, and the Philippines. So we were able to collect 24 case studies. And we also did desk review of domestic legal remedies in each of the countries, as well as look into corporate policies. There was a separate research for the policies of Facebook, YouTube, what else? I think was it Google? Yeah, Google Plus, I think. Yeah, and then we also looked at the terms of services of local telcos in each of the countries. So, and the framework that we used is access to justice. So when we talk about access to justice, we're not just looking at legal remedies, we're also looking at the enabling environment so that women can secure justice, can get justice, so that they can also, their agencies can also be developed. So anyway, most of the cases that we have, for instance, of course, I would be more knowledgeable about the cases in the Philippines. Like we did cases on uploading of sex video over the internet without the consent. Another case that we did is similar. It's also uploading of images in the internet without consent. But the difference between the two cases is that when the first case was filed, both cases were filed actually. When the first case was filed, there was no law in the Philippines that would respond to the issue of technology-related violence against women. We have a law on violence against women and children, but not something that would address something that is related to ICT. But when the second case was filed, the other uploading of images, there was already a law, the Anti-Photo and Video Voyeurism Act, which was used. So the images were immediately removed. And then we also did a case study on another group of another marginalized group, this time children. We looked into the case of children who are involved in cyber pornography in a small coastal town in the Philippines. Of course, in the other countries as well, they looked into issues that they have. And what we found is that, of course, there are harms that are related to these cases. Number one is, we've been talking about this since this morning, issues of privacy. There's a lot of invasion of privacy, emotional anxiety, there's fear, tarnished reputations, issues of even financial security, because some are unable to get jobs because they cannot go out. Their mobility is limited, they cannot go out, they do not want to talk to people, things like that. There's also the issue of online vilification. There's hate speech, and for instance, when you have an intimate video that is uploaded, you have already been the fact that it was uploaded in the internet is already you were already victimized. But every time somebody watches it, then you're being re-victimized, and the trauma is doubled and multiplied as well. And then, of course, in the case of children, there have been studies that they were exposed to safe and healthy environment at a tender age. In some countries, there are laws that would address such issues, but there are also countries that do not have laws to address technology-related violence against women. So, and then if there are laws, sometimes we also have to look into the fact that some law enforcers are not familiar with, they do not know how to deal with technology-related violence against women. They think that it's something trivial, or that's why some women, instead of reporting, they do not report. And also, when we were looking at the cases, there were a few who filed cases, but in many instances, for instance, in many instances, the justice system is very slow. That's why instead of pursuing the case, the women would drop the case, and they just do something to remedy their own predicaments, their own cases. So they approach organizations to help them. They report directly, maybe to ISPs, or maybe to private companies such as Facebook, for instance, etc. Yeah. So sometimes the legal framework isn't satisfactory, so women have their own strategies of dealing with it. And then we came up with several recommendations, actually, but I will just mention a few. That would include improving legislation in countries where there are no laws. Perhaps they can have laws or policies to address issues relating to technology-based violence against women, allocating resources perhaps for capacity building, not just of individuals, but also law enforcers as well, and even lawyers and judges. Of course, there is reviewing the development agenda vis-a-vis women, and focusing not just on reactionary measures, but also proactive and preventive measures. And we also have to contextualize their own experiences. And of course, there is the importance of strengthening women's networks as well, and transforming the gender and equal ICT infrastructure for women. And of course, we have to address the root causes of the problem and need to address the structural changes that we have to do. So,
Great, thank you, Lisa. While you were speaking, one thing that I was recalling from the morning talk, somebody said that the kind of democratic society you have in offline internet will also should follow the same. But one answer I don't have is that the virality of the internet cannot be beaten. In real life, that kind of viral character is not there, and that really makes it either extremely dangerous in terms of the situation, or risky, which in real life may not be the situation. But anyway, let's get into the next speaker, Ritu Srivastava from Digital Empowerment Foundation.
I should talk about the India perspective, but when I'm going into to talk about the India perspective, let's look at the number of India perspective. In India, we have 233 million internet users. But when we compare it with how many of them are in India is with the rural and urban side, the research says it that 65% of the internet users are belonging to urban side. 9% is just to rural side. We, Digital Empowerment Foundation and along with APC, we are doing understanding the state of internet in India and to understand various freedom of expression issues in India. Considering the hate speech, considering the factor of right to privacy, right to information, women rights, access to information, and access to information, those are the main research areas which right now we are doing it. And apparently the fact is that when we are talking about the access, we really forgetting about the people who are not using it, or the first time users are there. I'll go into the details of the number of users in India. We have 108.9 million Facebook users. WhatsApp users are 70 million. Rural internet users are 101 million. And if I go beyond and beyond, the number will go down. Specific to there are many issues, and there are many issues with respect to the freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and vis-a-vis with respect to internet governance issues are in India. Osama mentioned about that India government, Supreme Court has dissolved the IT Act 66. But the question is, on the another side, we have been talking about the net neutrality thing. And the point is that on one way we are talking about dissolving the Intermediary Liabilities Act. On the other side, we are bringing net neutrality portion and trying to make telcos to be operate right on our users' side. And what will, end of the day, it will affect the users. And users will be paying the price. If you think about who is paying the price, the first-time users will never jump into to access the internet. If you go to the intermediary liability side, Google takes out 2,794 requests down with the approach to the government. Facebook is taking down 4,960 requests. Every month it is. And within a month of 3 months it is. Twitter is the least one and LinkedIn is the least one. Twitter is a 15 and LinkedIn is the 5. So the talking about other liability issues, and when the research is also trying to understand how women, or how these big terminologies like net neutrality, zero rating, whether rural people do understand it or whether they don't understand it. Whether they do understand what, because they are a first-time user, do they understand about the content blocking, or do they don't understand it? So that's the other fact which we are trying to make it out. Another side of the story is when we talk about the women and online violence in India. It's the worst one. There are several issues when we talk about, there are Twitter-based sexual harassment, online harassment, Facebook, when you block something, there's a online harassment. There are, even though if I say that how many internet users are women, it's just 9%. It's just a 9%. And when you talk about them, it's also you think about how many of them, when they are online, they are already being harassed. So the research is also talking about that there are cases when we are covering the trying to understand online harassment. But on the other side, technology is also helping us. There are several examples which we are trying to understand through our research, is that how mobile phones are being helped to recall anyone in an emergency situation, how women have used specific tools to be in a safer side of a situation. So there are certain cases when we need to understand, as my colleague said, that we need to understand the pros and cons of the internet. But whose responsibility is that? That's the question which we need to ask ourselves as well.
Thank you, Ritu. Just to give you a couple of examples that I remember from India, being a patriarchal society, what happens is that everything is become an issue of whether you are allowed or not allowed by the male parts. I remember there are two examples from some village where the girls started using mobile and started being more liberal. The panchayat, which is the local village council, which is dominated by males, they literally released a kind of dictum that no woman will use the mobile, and if they are, they will be charged rupees 10,000 rupees. And their family will be harassed and things like that, because it is again the responsibility of the male. So ownership of technology or a medium or a device is also a serious issue in terms of getting online, especially because Indian case, in India, when you talk about internet, the first time internet access takes place through mobile, unlike computers, in other countries. It is the mobile which takes them to internet, and therefore access to mobile itself is important, and a freedom to access. But at the same time, if you're not allowing them to use mobile, then they have no way to get online. To give you a hard number, 72% of Indian women do not possess mobile or use mobile. 72%, which is a huge number. And even though out of 1.2 billion population, our mobile penetration is about 900 million plus, the absolute number of ownership of mobile and SIM per person is not more than 70%. So even in the case of male, not more than 65%, not more than 70% male use mobile. So there is a significant percentage of people, and when you go to rural India, obviously the number keeps on changing. So it's when you talk about India or a huge population, or Asia or Bangladesh or Pakistan, the violence against women or the curbing online access is a different kind of examples. It's not the same kind of example as you will have in different other parts of the world, and that's where the point of discussion changes when you go to a different kind of country. But one company that is everywhere, unlike democracy and non-democracy, is Google. So Ben is here, and wherever we are, Google is always in talk. Without Google, there is a T-shirt in India which says "Google God." So don't ask God what you want, but ask Google, you will get it. So with that note, Ben, let's have your points.
Sure. Really happy to be here and very happy that we're having this conversation at the Freedom Online Coalition specifically. Most of my job and the job of our team is to evangelize for how great a free and open internet is, what it's done to help people participate in political processes, how it's brought underrepresented voices online to challenge more conventional narratives. But the title of this session, A Free and Secure Internet for All, is so critical because even if we have the most free and open communication structure, there are still many people who do not feel comfortable participating in that system because of the harassment and violence and other things that they face online when they're having those conversations. So as we think about solutions, though, I think the absolute critical thing that we think about is not how do we get rid of those specific speech acts, but what can we do to actually combat the sentiments of the speech that are just coming forward. Because I think we'll all agree that these sentiments of misogyny and hatred and extremism are not new. These are things that have been around for a long time. What's new is the fact that those individuals have platforms where they can present them publicly and loudly, and they can direct them directly at individuals that could feel lots of harm because of that. So from the company perspective, we have a couple of approaches, just speaking for Google and YouTube on the way we think about this. We think we create transparent and consistent policies about what is and is not allowed on our specific platforms. So on YouTube, for example, we have policies about harassment and intimidation and extremism that if users see that and they feel that a specific video is harassing them or someone else, they can flag that video and it's reviewed by our teams. And we have consistent policies to address that. Hate speech around gender, nationality, ethnic origin, religion, a number of other issues as well against our policies. But again, those are just things that are addressing the specific speech act, and by us removing that piece of content does not actually address the sentiments that brought it up. And lots of research shows that blocking the bad speech actually empowers those people because they feel as though the system is holding them down and only pushes them to say those types of things more. So in terms of actually combating the sentiments, education is so critical in all of these things. And I think finding the right education, how do we reach individuals to try and start conversations around these issues of hate and misogyny and other things is really key. The example I brought up a couple of times today was during the elections in Nigeria in 2012, when there was issues of rumor mongering and falsehoods being spread, people who were using text messages to spread rumors about candidates or ethnic groups. And an NGO, with help from the government, started a text message campaign of just simple messages saying, challenge rumors, or not everything you hear is true, or just encouraging people to question the information that they're hearing, to get them that when they see hateful or extremist messages online, they just don't accept that and act and mobilize around that. And it's not a simple solution in thinking about gender issues or misogyny or other things, but I truly believe that that education by governments, working with companies, working with civil society, can push us in the direction to actually address the sentiments themselves instead of just the individual pieces of speech. Another area that's key that Ritu, I believe, brought up before was creating strong communities for people online. When we hear about people being attacked or harassed, one of the key complaints they tell us in these conversations is they feel very isolated, that they don't have a community that's supportive around them. At Google, we've been trying a couple of tactics to try and address this. We've been working with groups who are facing things like Islamophobia in the US, that they oftentimes didn't have strong, supportive Muslim communities online that they could reach. So we were holding seminars and trainings in partnership with NGOs around the country, trying to help leaders create these types of communities there. For women's issues specifically in India, which we know is a huge concern, we started a Get Women Online initiative, where we actually had physical carts that we would roll out that had Wi-Fi, that would allow people to just come and explore laptops and just try computing for the very first time in neighborhoods outside Delhi and other places. And the goal here, we went to schools, giving trainings and tutorials about accessing online, and we reached more than 100,000 women over that initial test period to try and just encourage more interaction in communities. This is certainly still an issue in the US as well, and I think a big part of that fact is that computing is still, in many regards, still dominated by men. In the US, 25% of science and engineering and computer science majors are women, 75% are men. In a place like Japan, it's 14% are women and the rest are men. So, of course, at companies as well, we face this problem in hiring and other things that we're trying to work on and improve those areas. And I think education from the company side, working to improve education, encouraging women in these ways is super important. In Japan, one initiative we're working on right now is just opening our doors to university students in Japan and having mentorship opportunities and seminars with women in the Japanese office to show people who might be interested in computer science, role models and people they can talk to. Those are just a few examples. I know each issue has its own specific challenges to work with, and each country and region has very specific issues as well. But I think companies are very invested in this to work to make the web as inclusive as possible and to fight some of the long-term effects of these sentiments as opposed to just tackling the speech one by one.
Thanks, Ben. In fact, just to add to what you said as HWGO program, which is help women get online. Incidentally, just to share as a matter of disclaimer, also Digital Empowerment Foundation works with Google in India for that. And your number is lesser than we achieved for you, which is we achieved about 150,000 women getting online in the last 1 year. So. Alone. So yeah, it helps certainly the women who are in remote areas, how to get them online. One answer I don't have, and maybe with the permission of the audience here, if we can start with a question and answer, and it will be good to have questions from you also. To start with Ben himself. How do we, I mean, can you make us understand, being a company, being profitable, being, accountable to your shareholders, how do you manage a media responsibility or a technological responsibility or societal responsibility in the middle of all this? Isn't that a challenge? And how do you manage it, being not so good may be more profitable than being good, or being ethical. So how do you, because the whole community is, or the population is dependent so much, because none of these platforms like Google and Facebook is just a company for us or a technology. It's a media platform. It's a community platform. It's a societal platform.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think the incentives of what, Google makes money when more people are online and are using the internet. When more people are doing Google searches, they're clicking on ads, Google makes money around that area. I think the issues we're talking about today are all things that make people less likely to use the internet because it makes them uncomfortable. So besides any sort of existential benefits that any individual employee of this company may feel to address this, I think it's within our profit incentive to develop programs and to try and encourage people, whether it's through access, whether it's through limiting discrimination or harassment or other things. I think that's good for us in the bottom line overall, and there certainly isn't a conflict between those types of programs and what's good for Google as a business.
Great. Thomas, what do you say? Do you think that risk of security, being online, is a bigger issue to get online, and there is not enough incentive? Is it also one of the reasons why more and more people are not getting online in developing countries?
I think there is lots of gray zones yet using internet. I think if you think of developing the internet, it's been only 20 years, and believe me, I'm old enough to remember 1993 when I was sitting behind my computer. I was thinking, so I would like to download some data and would like to communicate. And believe me or not, 10 years later it happened. So today we see, like a couple of years ago, we saw first cyber attacks. Today this is kind of permanent feature. So there is certainly lots of risks and gray areas. So probably I didn't respond to your question, but I want to also I don't want to leave you with kind of perhaps a view that we Estonians naive. And we're not naive. We recognize these vulnerable groups. But I think like children, women, all kind of risks, prostitution, pornography, all this kind of stuff on the internet. But I think there are three important issues how to at least deal with those risks. One, as Ben said, education. So, as a starting point in case of Estonia, we start educate our kids already in preschool. Just use computers to just do something, not to program, but to be part of that system. Second issue, which is very important, is that ethics. You cannot go around that. I'll put it in a different way, code of conduct. So, and also, and third issue is that, of course, legislation online and using internet and any sector of life needs some kind of regulation. And I think in Estonia we have very strong regulations trying to reflect as well as possible also this issue which we raised with my colleague panelist. But again, we still see that there are more benefits. Simply to tell you that maybe some consider the Estonians a total crazy. We are trying today to create in Europe common digital identity. So as our Deputy State Secretary was speaking about cooperation with Finland, we see the benefits for many people across the Europe, starting with Europe, to have this kind of common benefits, which would be uniform across the continent. And they are going even further today. We are trying to introduce a sort of feature which is called e-residency, that every one of you, don't mistake citizenship, but e-residency can apply for a certain e-card and use those possibilities, what we mentioned, what we've seen on this slide, which I told you not to remember because it's work, but difficult to memorize. So basically, we see more benefits. We try to alleviate the risks, take measures against the risks, but we still believe that there are more benefits to make using online properly. But also, we face also a similar situation, but again, perhaps final point, internet also provides opportunity for vulnerable groups to have kind of grouping cohesion, so and to address those issues also. But it needs to have a strong civil society. And today in Estonia, people can ask government, and they're asking government so about their policies. What government did created opportunities for society, and maybe not always to the liking of the government. I think Estonian civil society is pretty strong. They are taking on the Estonian government and asking for answers. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, you have some points on this regard. That what are the things that is hampering proliferation of internet or getting online?
Okay, I would just like to add to what the ambassador was saying. Of course, we need education. People love using the internet. Like in my country, for instance, we have been called the texting capital of the world, selfie capital. People like to post a lot of their photos, etc., without really knowing what it could mean. Especially for young people. Like we have a case, for instance, she just posted a selfie and she found out that her photo was already being displayed outside a beer house. And it seemed as if she's working there. So sometimes we have to be careful. We have there's a campaign in one television station in my country. It says, "Think before you click." So it also puts responsibility on the individual as well. We've been trying to reach out to different groups in my country, in the Philippines, for instance, even to parents. We're telling them that they should look at what their children are doing as well. They should not be afraid. Parents should not be afraid of using the computer so that they would understand what their children are getting into, because a lot of kids are also being bullied online. And then, of course, we should talk, we should engage with each other. Like when we were doing the research, after the research, we were talking to some legislators. We were talking to private companies like Google, for instance, Facebook, Twitter. We were trying to reach out to them, present to them the findings of the research so that we can do something about it. Are there standards that we can develop so that we can develop the ethics that you were talking about, or guidelines that could help us so that issues such as violence against women or whatever abuse online could be addressed. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. Ritu, you have some pressing points?
The point is that even though internet has a certain issues, like whether we have a online harassment or whatever, but it also gives us a opportunity to explore it, as well as when we are talking about specifically to the India perspective, when we are talking about the first time also user also need to understand the digital security aspect of it. If we try to engage them or tell them about the digital security, it might is also helpful for them to understand what is required to do and what is not to be done. So that's the way we can make a balance out that first time user coming with the digital security aspect as well.
Thank you. Can we open the session to the audience? And if any of you would like to ask any question or comment or share your views, any of you? No? Lots of countries are here. Yes, please. You can introduce yourself and you can then.
All right, my name is Amar. I'm a local Mongolian IT company representative. So regarding this internet, is of course is unlimited topic. Really focus on the key point, and but I think the internet has become more attractive, and we giving so much more seriously every single informations we take very seriously. I think people are considering the technology is changing our the view on. I think maybe it's like 10 years ago. Maybe if we was same on this similar topic, maybe nobody really gives very focus and discussion. 10 years is become changing. Also, the technology is changing our lifestyle. Maybe we should consider how we focus more on our lifestyle and what's our how we can prepare to this next or generation people. Maybe because of like Miss Ritu Srivastava, as you mentioned, they're like first users, online users. And we don't have any idea what's the dangers of and what's the advantage of internet. Why we need to really connect to internet. I think this is really the main question. Maybe we can begin why we need technology. Maybe we need have a better life, maybe better improve our life, and have like Lisa mentioned that the overseas workers from Philippines must to connect with the families through online, and what type of information they need. So we having connecting all through this similar networks, but how we can evaluate through the education, and what's the right education for because of we have a different perspective, like India or Mongolia, like America, or different of education standards, different of education methods. But beware of main point is because is it we have to too much focus on internet, what's already applied on the internet, because it's like naturally happen on the internet, like somebody is posted someone's picture, it's not allowed to that, but it's that user is anonymous. It's not, nobody is really, we can catch up who's really, because it's we cannot prove who's really did that picture or who's reposted, because it's unlimitless. And if our also discussion will be unlimitless if we consider on the following topic, I guess. But like example for China, they have like they identify the users who's really, and the users, they will register the users, and that person will click, and then actually the government is have they can verify or validate the user who's actually what he's posted online, but actually the user is more responsible on what he's posting on the internet. So well, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? So, okay, can I now do a last round of closure by asking a question that to realize a free and secure internet for all, what are the 3 things that you would suggest? So that we have a recommendation and we have a task cut out for us. So just 3, or I mean at least 3, but you can suggest more. So just 3 points. How do you think in a half the world is connected, freedom of internet is being questioned, security is being hampered all the time? These questions, how do you think that we can realize free and secure internet for all? 3 points. I mean, we don't have to get into speech, but just 3 bullet points. What's your recommendation, Thomas?
Thank you. Provided that, as you said, that from 10 years from today to 10 years later,
Yes.
we don't know what we're going to discuss, but probably it's irreversible. Progress is irreversible. So if this is the case, then 3 points. Not too afraid, meet the challenges and go on.
Not to?
Not too afraid.
Not be afraid.
Not too afraid to for internet. Meet the challenges and go on.
So although it's 3 points, sounded like one sentence, so
Okay,
I had to
they
break
tried
it.
to split
But
it
no,
into
it's powerful. There's no doubt about it. Lisa.
Yes, of course. As our colleague from Mongolia was saying, there's still a lot of things that will happen. We don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of development going on. We should learn. We should study. We should look into how powerful the internet is, how we can use it for our own benefit, whether it's learning skills and getting something from it. And at the same time, we should also, as individuals, we should also take responsibility and let us work together so that we can achieve the internet that we want.
So did I hear 2 points or 3 points?
Actually, 3.
Yeah, so learn, study, education is the first part, and the second is individual
Responsibility
responsibility, and
and
third is
working
skills. Working together, okay. That's what coalition is.
Yeah.
Ritu?
Yeah. It's also about the decision maker, those who are making the policies as well. They should also think about the policy should be uniform. Either it should also think about their first time users. It should be participative, engagement, and collaborative approach should be there while making the policy. So that's also very important. Framing the policy and just to giving the citizens is not the effective way to regulate something. It's always to be a participative and engagement oriented.
Tough question. I think my 3 would be creation, community, and openness. I think a lot of the issues that we're talking about here, it's issues of consuming bad things that we don't like. And I think to push back on this, it's really important to create new platforms in which to engage, to create content that pushes back on those negative messages, create programs that systematically counter those ideas and not just the speech itself. I think community is really key, that any individual or any individual stakeholder is not well positioned to tackle this issue themselves. That you need the work of civil society, you need the communities themselves, you need companies, you need governments in certain circumstances to help address these solutions. So looking to one constituency to solve the problem is never going to be a solution. And third, I think, is openness. If we enact public policies or try and address this issue by creating barriers on the web, censoring information, using well-intentioned excuses like national security, other things, to block that openness of the internet. We're ultimately not going to address those sentiments, and we're going to inherit an internet that's not as helpful to any of us. Yeah.
Thank you very much. There is a word in called community policing. If you want the government and the police to govern your colony or your society, or that is impossible, because there will always be some people who can pass them by. But if the community themselves take responsibility of policing themselves, govern themselves, then that's a better society. And with that hope that internet also becomes more responsible in terms of taking care of themselves, overcoming their hindrances themselves. It will be open, it will be well legislated and well governed. And with that note, thank you very much. We perhaps take an advantage of finishing about 23 minutes before time and enjoy a longer coffee. There is no session after this. No, I have been informed by the organizer that there is no session after this.
This morning they said that there would be update on the freedom.
Yeah, but they said that that's also not happening, I guess. Yeah, so not happening. It's happening? Not happening, that's what I'm saying.
I just have something. Yeah. By the way, we have copies of the summary of the research we did on the Philippines on gender-based violence in the internet. So if you're interested, we have copies here. Thank you.
Wonderful. So with that note, thank you very much. At 7 o'clock, there is an invitation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Those who have got an invitation, we'll see you there. Thank you very much.